Marriage, at least in the beginning, always felt like the safest place in the world. For me, it was no different. When I first married Anna, I thought I had discovered the perfect partner, a woman whose smile could dissolve the heaviest of my worries, whose presence made the dullest days brighter. For years, I lived with the certainty that I was loved, respected, and valued. We built memories together, traveled to places we had once only dreamed of, and shared secrets whispered in the quiet of midnight. But time, I learned, has a way of testing every relationship. Small cracks appear, sometimes so faint they go unnoticed. A careless word, a forgotten gesture, a misunderstanding left unresolved. Individually harmless, but together they form a pattern. And slowly, without either of us realizing, the warmth that once defined our marriage began to cool. Anna had always had a sharp sense of humor. In the early days, I admired it. She could turn the most ordinary conversation into something playful and entertaining. But over the last year, her jokes had changed. They no longer felt playful. They felt cutting. They no longer made me laugh. They made me pause. It started subtly. She'd tease me about my long work hours, about how maybe she should find someone who actually had time for her. She'd smirk when she said it, as though expecting me to laugh along. And at first, I told myself it was harmless banter, just her way of releasing frustration. But as the jokes grew sharper, I couldn't help but feel the sting. Then came the moment that lodged itself in my chest like a blade. We were sitting in the living room one evening, the television humming in the background. She was scrolling through her phone, half engaged in conversation with me. Out of nowhere, she laughed softly and said, "You know, you'll be lucky if I don't cheat one day." I froze. The words hung in the air heavier than any silence I had ever experienced. I looked at her, expecting her to immediately backtrack, to reassure me that she didn't mean it. But instead, she smirked, shrugged her shoulders, and went back to scrolling. I forced myself to chuckle, though every part of me burned inside. My chest tightened, my hands turned clammy. I told myself she didn't mean it, that it was just another one of her jokes. But that night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling while she slept peacefully beside me, I couldn't shake the thought, what if she wasn't joking? A man can convince himself of many things to keep his world intact. I tried to brush it off, to bury the sting under the weight of routine. But something inside me had shifted. A seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew in silence. From that day onward, I found myself watching her differently, listening more closely to her words, noticing the smallest changes in her behavior. And though I didn't know it yet, that single offhand comment would lead me to a discovery that would change the course of our marriage forever. The days after Anna's joke felt strangely different. Nothing had changed on the surface. She still smiled at me in the mornings, still cooked dinner, still kissed me goodbye before I left for work. But beneath all those familiar gestures, I sensed something missing, something I couldn't quite name. Once doubt enters the mind, it doesn't leave quietly. It whispers in the middle of conversations. It lingers in the pauses between words. It twists even the most ordinary actions into possible clues. I caught myself analyzing every detail, wondering if I was reading too much into things, or if I was finally waking up to truth that had been hiding in plain sight. Anna had become more protective of her phone. I remember when we used to casually leave our phones on the coffee table, face up, buzzing with notifications we didn't bother to hide. Now, whenever her phone lit up, she tilted the screen away from me. Sometimes she'd excuse herself and walk into another room to take a call, returning minutes later with a perfectly composed face. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she was simply texting a friend about something personal, something unrelated to me. But the image of her joking about cheating gnawed at me, refusing to let me rest. Her late nights grew more frequent. "I'm just going out with friends," she'd say, slipping on a dress that looked more suited for a date than a casual evening out. I'd ask her who she was meeting, and her answers always felt vague. Just some colleagues, or you don't know them. Each time, I wanted to push further, to demand specifics. But then her eyes would harden, daring me to question her, and I'd swallow my words. It wasn't always like this. I could still remember the version of Anna who used to text me throughout the day just to say she missed me, who'd plan small surprises like leaving notes in my briefcase or baking my favorite dessert after a stressful week. That Anna seemed like a ghost now, familiar but distant, unreachable. One night, as I lay in bed waiting for her to come home, I scrolled back through our old messages. The contrast was undeniable. Months ago, our conversations had been full of warmth, humor, and affection. Now, her replies were short, clipped, sometimes hours apart. The warmth was gone, replaced by a cold efficiency. The more I noticed these changes, the more paranoid I became. I started checking the clock when she left, memorizing the exact time she said she'd return, silently comparing it with the moment the door finally opened again. I listened for the faintest trace of perfume or cigarette smoke, anything that didn't belong. I caught myself imagining scenarios, her laughing with someone else, holding hands across a restaurant table, whispering secrets in the dark. I hated myself for thinking these things. I hated how the doubt consumed me. But even worse, I hated how part of me believed it might be true. Then came the inconsistencies. She told me one evening that she was having dinner with a coworker, but later, when I casually asked what restaurant they went to, she stumbled for a second before naming a place I knew she didn't like. Another time, she claimed she had been at the gym, yet came home with perfectly styled hair, as if she had never broken a sweat. Small cracks, maybe, but cracks nonetheless. Still, I tried to hold on to trust. I reminded myself of the vows we had exchanged, of the years we had shared. I told myself I was overreacting. That doubt was poisoning my mind more than any truth could. But deep down, I knew trust without honesty was just self-deception. At work, I found it hard to concentrate. My colleagues noticed I was distracted. My boss asked if everything was okay at home. I lied, of course. I said I was just tired, just busy. But inside, the weight of suspicion pressed heavier on me with each passing day. The night that changed everything came unexpectedly. Anna had fallen asleep on the couch, her phone slipping from her hand. For the first time in months, it wasn't locked with her usual pattern. My heart raced as I held it, torn between the desire to look and the fear of what I might find. My thumb hovered over the screen, the glow of the display reflecting my hesitation. I didn't open it that night, but the seed of doubt had already grown into something I could no longer ignore. I knew, sooner or later, I would have to confront the truth, whatever it was. And as fate would have it, the truth would come not from her phone, but from a single document that I was never meant to see. It was a Saturday morning when I stumbled upon it, though, at the time, I wasn't looking for anything. I had woken up early, restless from another night of half-sleep. Anna was still in bed, her hair spilling across the pillow, her breathing steady and untroubled. I envied how peaceful she looked, as if nothing weighed on her at all. I went downstairs to make coffee, trying to shake off the unease that had become my shadow. While searching for a pen in the drawer of our small home office, I found an envelope tucked beneath a pile of old bills and receipts. It wasn't hidden exactly, but it also wasn't placed where one would normally look. My curiosity prickled. I pulled it out, turning it over in my hands. My name wasn't written on it. I told myself to put it back, that it wasn't mine to open, that marriage was built on trust. But hadn't that trust already been broken, or at least tested? My hands trembled slightly as I slid a finger under the seal. The paper inside was heavier than ordinary, official, deliberate. When I unfolded it, my breath caught. It wasn't a love letter or anything handwritten. It was a printed document, formal in tone and stamped with a legal insignia. My eyes darted across the words, reading faster and faster as the meaning settled over me. It was a consultation record from a law firm, a draft petition for divorce, with Anna's name listed as a petitioner. My vision blurred for a moment, as if my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. I sat down heavily, the document shaking in my grip. Divorce? She hadn't said a word about it. Not a single conversation. Not even a hint that she was considering ending our marriage. And yet here it was, black and white, official. I read it again, slower this time, my heart pounding. The reasons cited: irreconcilable differences, emotional neglect, incompatibility. My stomach clenched. Was this how she saw me? Was this what she had been carrying in silence? all the while joking about cheating and smiling at me as if nothing was wrong. There were also sections about property division, financial arrangements, even custody details. Though we had no children, which only made the thoroughness of it more chilling. She had thought this through. She had planned for it. I sat there for what felt like hours, the document heavy in my hands. 1,000 memories rushed through me. Our wedding day, our first apartment, the vacations, the late-night talks about our dreams. And over all of them hung the cruel weight of her laughter. You'll be lucky if I don't cheat. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe this was old. Maybe she had drafted it in a moment of anger and never followed through. Maybe she had changed her mind. But if that were true, why was it still here, tucked away but not destroyed? Why hadn't she told me? When Anna finally came downstairs, rubbing her eyes and yawning, I quickly shoved the document back into the envelope and slid it beneath the stack of papers where I had found it. My heart thudded as she kissed me casually on the cheek, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I couldn't look at her the same way for the rest of the day. Every gesture felt tainted with suspicion. Every smile seemed rehearsed. I wondered how many times she had looked at me, knowing she had already started planning her exit. Over the next week, I became obsessed. I searched for more signs, more hidden papers, anything that could explain the document. I checked drawers, shelves, even the glove compartment of her car. I found receipts for dinners at places she had never mentioned to me, credit card statements with charges I didn't recognize. Each discovery added fuel to the fire burning inside me. I stopped sleeping properly. Food lost its taste. My world had narrowed to a single question. Was she cheating, or was she simply planning to leave me? The irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent weeks obsessing over her phone, convinced that was where the answers lay. Yet the truth had been sitting quietly in our home office all along, waiting for me to stumble across it. And yet, even with the document in my possession, I didn't confront her immediately. A part of me was afraid of the answer. Another part wanted to gather more, to be absolutely sure before I set off the explosion I knew was coming. But the longer I held on to the secret, the more unbearable it became. I would watch her laugh at something on her phone, and instead of joining in, I would wonder if she was texting a lawyer or a lover. I would hear her tell me she loved me, and all I could think of was her name printed neatly at the top of that petition. The day finally came when I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I decided I would wait for her to make another one of her cruel jokes about cheating, about me being lucky. And then, calmly, without raising my voice, I would place the document in front of her. I wanted to see the look in her eyes when her secret was no longer hidden. For days, the document burned a hole in my thoughts. I carried its weight everywhere I went, at work, in the car, lying awake at night beside Anna. It wasn't just paper. It was evidence, silent but damning, of a life I didn't know my wife was living in her mind. Every time I looked at her, I could almost see the stamp of betrayal written across her forehead. I kept rehearsing in my mind how I would confront her. Should I slam the document down in anger, demanding answers? Or should I sit calmly, force her to explain herself while I control my fury? Each scenario played out differently in my imagination, but none of them eased the ache inside me. The strangest part was how normal Anna acted. She still asked me about my day, still laughed at her shows, still kissed me goodnight. If she was truly planning to leave me, she hid it with masterful ease. But then, every time she made another sly joke about me being lucky or teased me about not being attentive, it only twisted the knife deeper. One night, I pulled the document out again after she had fallen asleep. The moonlight through the window made the words stark and clear. I read every line, trying to decipher her heart from the legal jargon. Irreconcilable differences. Those words echoed again and again. What differences? Had we really drifted so far apart, or had she just stopped trying? I noticed meticulous details, the mention of assets, the proposal for spousal support, even the timeline she seemed to have discussed with the attorney. This wasn't a passing thought. She had invested time, effort, and money into planning this. I tried to imagine her sitting across from a lawyer, describing me, describing our marriage, laying out reasons why it should all end. The image was unbearable. My wife, the woman I had promised forever to, had reduced our life together into bullet points and legal language. I thought back to the night she joked about cheating. At the time, I had believed she was simply being cruel, pushing me with words she didn't mean. But now, that joke seemed less like humor and more like a confession disguised in laughter. Maybe she hadn't cheated yet. Maybe she was warning me. Or maybe she had already crossed that line, and the divorce document was her safety net. The temptation to confront her immediately was overwhelming. I imagined waking her from her peaceful sleep, shoving the paper into her hands, demanding the truth. But some part of me wanted to catch her off guard, to watch her reaction when she didn't have time to prepare a lie. So I waited. Days passed in unbearable silence. I spoke less, smiled less, though I doubt she even noticed. She seemed distracted herself, always busy, always half present. The breaking point came during dinner, one evening. She was sipping wine, scrolling through her phone with that same amused smirk I had come to dread. Then she chuckled and said casually, "You really should be grateful, you know. Most men in your shoes would have been cheated on by now." I stared at her, the words echoing in my skull. She didn't even look up, didn't notice the storm building in my eyes. That was it. That was the moment. I stood slowly, went into the office and retrieved the envelope. My hands were steady now, strangely calm, as if the decision had already been made. When I returned to the dining room, she finally looked up, puzzled by my silence. "What's that?" she asked, gesturing to the paper in my hand. Without a word, I placed the document in front of her, sliding across the table until it rested by her plate. Her smile faltered. She glanced down, then back at me, confusion flickering into alarm as her eyes focused on the bold header, "Petition for divorce." The color drained from her face. Her fingers trembled as she touched the edge of the paper, as if it might burn her skin. Where did you get this?" she whispered. I didn't answer immediately. I wanted the silence to press on her, to force her to fill it. I leaned back in my chair, studying her expression. The confident, joking woman was gone. In her place sat someone pale, shaken, almost frightened. For the first time in months, I felt in control. The roles had shifted. She was the one scrambling now, and I was the one demanding answers without speaking a word. Her body gave a small, involuntary shiver. The document lay between us like a loaded gun, and she knew I had already pulled the trigger by revealing it. At last, I broke the silence. My voice was low, steady. "Care to explain?" Her eyes darted from me to the paper, then back again. Her lips parted as though to speak, but no words came out. And in that silence, I realized the truth was going to be even more complicated than I had imagined. The air in the dining room thickened until it felt hard to breathe. Anna sat frozen, her hand hovering over the document, like it might vanish if she didn't touch it. Her wine glass stood untouched, the deep red liquid trembling slightly from the shake in her fingers. "Where you find this?" she asked again, her voice low, strained. "Does it matter?" I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. "The question is, why did you write it?" She flinched, as though the words had struck her physically. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Her eyes darted to the paper, then to me, then away to the wall as though searching for an escape. I wasn't, she stammered. "It's not what you think." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. "Then tell me what it is." Because to me, it looks like my wife went to a lawyer behind my back and planned to walk away from our marriage. Was that a joke too, Anna? Like all those little comments about cheating? Her face crumpled, shame flashing across her features. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Then make me understand." Her silence stretched, the clock ticking in the background like a hammer on steel. Finally, she exhaled shakily and pushed the document back toward me. "Yes, I went to see a lawyer," she admitted, "but I never filed it. I didn't go through with it." "Why draft it at all?" I shot back. "You don't just accidentally plan a divorce. You don't list assets, schedule consultations, and outline irreconcilable differences by mistake." Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. She looked at me with a mixture of guilt and defiance. Because I was angry, because I was lonely, because I didn't know if you cared anymore. The words landed like blows. "Lonely?" I repeated. "Anna, I worked myself to exhaustion for us. Every late night, every hour I put in, It was for our future. And your answer was to plan your exit. She shook her head, pressing her palms to her temples. You were gone all the time, and when you were home, you weren't really here. You stopped seeing me. You stopped noticing me. I felt invisible in my own marriage. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but part of me knew she wasn't entirely wrong. I had buried myself in work, thinking stability was the same as love. Still, her betrayal burned hotter than any guilt. So instead of talking to me, you wrote this? I tapped the document. You laughed in my face about cheating while secretly planning to throw everything we built into the trash? Her lips trembled. I didn't cheat, she said firmly, almost desperately. Not once. I swear to you. The jokes, they were stupid, cruel, I know. But I never crossed that line. I thought about leaving, yes, but I never touched anyone else. I searched her face for the truth. The fear in her eyes seemed real. Her body shook, not with defiance, but with the weight of being exposed. And yet, the anger in me refused to soften. Do you know what it's like? I said slowly. To sleep beside someone and wonder they're laughing at you in secret? To wonder if the hand they hold has already touched someone else? You broke us long before this paper ever existed. Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. She reached across the table, but I pulled back, leaving her hand suspended in the air. I was wrong, she whispered. I was angry and stupid and selfish. But I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't know how to make you see me again. Her words twisted inside me. For a moment, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to throw the document into the fire and pretend none of this had happened. But then I remembered the smirk, the careless way she had joked about cheating, as though my heart were some toy she could play with. I stood, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. You've made me see you, Anna, I said, my voice cold, more clearly than ever before. She looked up at me, her face pale and wet with tears. What are you going to do? I picked up the document, folded it slowly, and slipped it back into the envelope. That depends, I said, on whether you're ready to be honest. With me, with yourself. No more jokes, no more lies. The next words out of your mouth decide everything. The room fell silent. She sat trembling, caught between confession and denial. The clock ticked on, the weight of her choice pressing heavier with every second. And in that moment, I knew whatever she said next would decide the fate of our marriage. Anna's lips trembled as she tried to form words. For a long moment, only silence hung between us, broken only by the steady ticking of the clock. I could see her chest rising and falling quickly, her breath uneven. She knew there was no space left for jokes or evasions. Finally, she spoke. I didn't cheat, she said, her voice cracking. I need you to believe that before anything else. I've made horrible choices, but I never betrayed you like that. I studied her carefully. Her eyes were wide, wet, pleading, so unlike the smug look she usually wore when making her cutting jokes. I wanted to believe her, but the document still sat heavy in my hand. Then why? I asked, my voice low, dangerous. Why go this far? Why draft a divorce petition in secret instead of talking to me? Her tears spilled freely now, because I was drowning and I didn't know how to reach you. I frowned, but she pressed on, her words tumbling out quickly, as if she feared losing her chance. You were always working, always gone. When you were home, you were tired, distracted. You stopped looking at me like you used to. I felt like a piece of furniture in your life, necessary, but unnoticed. And I hated myself for needing more attention, for craving something as simple as your eyes on me, your voice telling me I mattered. I felt her words like tiny knives. Guilt crept in uninvited, reminding me of the nights I'd buried myself in work emails instead of noticing the woman sitting next to me. But guilt didn't erase the betrayal of her secrecy. So you decided the solution was to end it? I asked bitterly. I decided the solution was to scare myself into realizing how serious things had gotten, she admitted. I thought if I put it down on paper, if I saw what leaving would look like, maybe I'd understand what I truly wanted. I shook my head, unable to fathom her reasoning. So you went to a lawyer just to scare yourself? Yes, she whispered. I never filed it. I never even planned to. I just needed to feel like I had control. And when I held that document in my hands, I realized I didn't want a divorce. I didn't want another man. I wanted you. But by then, I was too ashamed to tell you. So I hid it. I searched her face again, this time seeing not smugness or deceit but raw fear. Fear of losing me. Fear of her own mistakes. Her body shook as though my silence were a verdict she couldn't bear. I joked about cheating because I was bitter. She confessed, her voice barely audible. It was cruel, I know. I wanted to hurt you the way I felt hurt. But it was wrong, and I see that now. Please, believe me. I never touched anyone else. I never wanted to. Her words rang with desperation. And for the first time, I wondered if the document that had nearly destroyed me wasn't a symbol of betrayal, but a twisted cry for help. But could I forgive her? That was the question burning in my chest. Trust, once fractured, didn't mend easily. The document existed. The jokes had been made, the damage done. Yet here she was, stripped of her armor, begging me to see her truth. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. The weight of years, our memories, our vows, our laughter, even our mistakes, pressed on me. Maybe she hadn't cheated. Maybe she had only been reckless, foolish, desperate. But still, she had hidden her pain behind cruelty, leaving me to rot in doubt. When I opened my eyes again, she was staring at me with trembling hope. Please, she whispered, don't let this be the end of us. The truth was out, but the decision what to do with it was now mine alone. Her words lingered in the room long after she had spoken them. Please, don't let this be the end of us. I sat there, staring at the woman I had once thought I knew completely. My mind was a battlefield, one side screaming that she had broken my trust, the other whispering that perhaps I had failed her in ways I never admitted. The document, still lying between us, was both a wound and a mirror, reflecting everything wrong in our marriage. I don't know if I can trust you again, I said finally. My voice was steady, though inside I was unraveling. Anna wiped at her tears with trembling hands. I'll earn it back. Whatever it takes, I'll do it. I don't want anyone else. I want us. I studied her face, searching for deception, for some flicker of insincerity. But all I saw was fear and regret. The smugness, the biting humor, the careless cruelty. It was gone. She looked small, fragile, like someone terrified of losing everything. You don't get to joke about cheating anymore, I said sharply. Not once. Not ever. Do you understand what those words did to me? She nodded quickly, shame in her eyes. Yes, I was stupid. I thought I was being funny, but I was just hurting you. I'll never do it again. I leaned back, exhaling. Part of me wanted to walk away right then, to slam the door and never look back. It would have been easier, cleaner. But as I looked at her, broken and trembling, I remembered the woman who once left love notes in my briefcase, who once waited up for me no matter how late I came home, who once kissed me like I was her world. Things can't go back to the way they were, I said. If we move forward, it'll be different. Stricter, honest, or nothing at all. She swallowed hard. Different how? No secrets. I replied firmly. No hidden papers, no vague answers, no cruel jokes. If you're hurt, you say it. If I'm neglecting you, you tell me. And I'll listen. But if you ever make me feel like a fool again, if you ever hide something this big from me, you won't have to draft another petition. I'll walk away myself. Her tears flowed again, but this time she nodded with conviction. I promise. I'll be better. I'll fight for us. I stared at the document one last time, then folded it neatly and slipped it back into the envelope. I didn't burn it, didn't rip it apart. Instead, I tucked it into the drawer where I'd first found it. A reminder, perhaps, that love isn't indestructible, that even the strongest bonds can fray when neglected. That night, when she reached for my hand in bed, I hesitated, but I let her hold it. Her grip was firm, almost desperate, as if afraid I'd slip away in the dark. I lay awake for a long time, my thoughts heavy, my heart uncertain. But somewhere beneath the doubt, a small spark of hope remained. Forgiveness would not come easily. Trust would take time to rebuild, if it ever did. But as I listened to her breathing beside me, I realized I wasn't ready to let go just yet. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps we had both been drowning in silence. Maybe this confrontation, painful as it was, had torn down walls we'd both been too stubborn to admit existed. The road ahead would not be smooth. But for the first time in a long time, I felt we might actually walk it together. And so, though her joke had nearly destroyed us, the truth behind it gave us something we hadn't had in years, a chance to start over.